In this video, we'll solve a rather complicated absolute value equation. So how do we go about doing this? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to isolate the absolute value. So first, isolate the absolute value. By that I mean I'm going to try to get the absolute value term, this one right here, all by itself on one side. Okay, now how do I do that? It would be a mistake to combine the 4 plus 3. We cannot add the 4 plus 3 first. Why? Because of PEMDAS. So technically, there's a little multiplication symbol right here. We're doing 3 times this absolute value, and order of operations, or PEMDAS, says that we need to do multiplication before addition. So I'm not allowed to do 4 plus 3 before I do 3 times this absolute value. So I think a common mistake is someone's going to try to do like 4 plus 3 first. You can't do that. So what can we do? We can actually subtract 4 from both sides. So if I subtract 4 from here and subtract 4 from here, I end up getting 3 times absolute value of 2z minus 10 equals 10 minus 4, which is 6. Okay. Now what? I'm trying to isolate the absolute value. So how do I do that? Well, I have a 3 in front of it. We want to get rid of that. How do you get rid of 3 times something? You divide by 3. So I'm going to divide by 3 on the left and divide by 3 on the right. What you do to one side, you have to do to the other, so they stay balanced. So on the left, I get absolute value of 2z minus 10, and on the right, I get 6 divided by 3, which is 2. Okay, so now that you've absoluted the absolute value, we've isolated the absolute value, we can solve using what we know from the last video. So how do we solve this? Anytime you have absolute value of something equals a positive number, then you can take what's inside the absolute value, 2z minus 10, and you can set it equal to that number. But then we also have other solutions that come from what you get when you set the inside of the absolute value equal to negative that number. So I'm going to set 2z minus 10 equal to 2. And I'm also going to set 2z minus 10 equal to negative 2. What's the logic behind this? Well, in order to get a 2 out, so in order to get a 2 out, when I do absolute value of something, in order to get a 2 out, I need to have either the inside here in the absolute value is equal to 2, in other words, 2z minus 10 is equal to 2, or I could have 2z minus 10 is equal to negative 2. How come? Because if the inside here is either, so if this inside here is either 2 or negative 2, then I'm going to get a 2 back out when I take its absolute value. So that's the logic behind setting up these two equations right here. Okay, now I have two equations that are linear, and I can solve for z by just like isolating the z. So how do I do that? I'll solve the one on the left first, so I can do that by adding 10 to both sides to get 2z equals 12. And then I can divide both sides by 2 to get z is equal to 12 over 2 is 6. Now on the right, if I add 10 to both sides, I get 2z is equal to 8. And then if I divide by 2, I end up getting z is equal to 8 over 2 is 4. So this gives us two answers. Now the last thing that you should do is you should check these answers before you are 100% certain. You should check them. So how do you check them? You always want to check using the very original equation you started out with. So you don't want to check using like say like this line or some other line. You want to check using the very, very original one, because if you check using something that's in between, you might have actually made a mistake somewhere in between. So you want to check using your original equation. So our original equation was, it was 4 plus 3 absolute value of 2z minus 10 equals 10. And then you can check your answers by just like plugging them in to that. So to check z equals 6, I would plug 6 into the z spot. And I want to make sure that I have both sides are equal to each other. And if they're not, then you made a mistake somewhere. So if we do that, we get 4 plus 3. 2 times 6 is 12. Minus 10 is 2. And we want to see are both sides equal. Absolute value of 2 is 2. And then we get 4 plus 6 equals 10. Is that true? Yes, it is. Okay, so z equals 6 checks out. Now you guys should take a minute to check that when you plug in 4 into this z spot, both sides are equal to each other. So you can do that on your own. If you do, you should see that it is a solution, and our two solutions are z equals 6 and z equals 4, where I'm going to have you guys check z equals 4 in case that part's not clear. So you check z equals 4.